Howdy, cruisers. Would you book a guarantee itinerary? Okay. Similar to a guarantee cabin, and for those of you that don't know, a guarantee cabin is when you book a certain category of cabin, inside, balcony, something like that, and then the cruise line assigns it to you closer to the cruise, sometimes the day before the cruise, depending on what inventory is available. It's a great way to save money if you're not particularly picky about your cabin location. I am not, so I do use this option quite frequently. However, let's ponder the question of whether or not it might be worthwhile for the cruise lines to offer guarantee itineraries, meaning you book a cruise, but you don't really know where it's going to go. You would know the embarkation part because that is important, but in terms of the exact itinerary, it's still up in the air. Now, there are a few places where this would be possible, but for me and for a lot of people, it is definitely possible in the Caribbean, especially leaving from Florida. So what the cruise line would offer is simply a 7-day Caribbean cruise with the private island in there somewhere. That's something that they could guarantee. But they don't necessarily publish the exact itinerary or the ports. Now, a lot of people are going to start asking, like, oh, well, how would we know what to do? Well, see, here's the thing about the Caribbean. Once you have sailed there a number of times, like I have, and like I suspect many of you have, you begin to realize that all the ports are the same. Yeah, they really are all the same. There isn't much to distinguish one port from another. They all have ziplining, they all have ATV tours, they all have swim with the dolphins, they all have catamaran rides, they all have liquor tasting. Might be a different liquor, but still, it's a liquor tasting. They all have a food tour, they all have a museum tour, they all have a cultural tour, they all have a walking tour, they all have snorkeling and diving and blah, 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 blah. So yeah, they're all the same. Pretty much all the same. So does it really matter where you go snorkeling? For most people, it doesn't. Now, granted, if you are like a completionist, or you desperately need to see, the sunken tugboat on Curacao, then okay, fine. You need to book a specific itinerary. But for most people, it probably doesn't matter. And just listening to guests, talk about their excursions when they come back, they just want to go for the ATV ride or the ziplining. That's it. And they'd be perfectly happy with the experience on any number of different islands or in any number of different ports. However, I think that this could give the cruise lines a leg up on fighting the seemingly incessant increase in fees and costs that some of these islands and ports and countries are charging the cruise lines. Seems like every month there's a new story about this port charging more, this country charging more, this region, the state, charging more. And it's always targeted at the cruise lines. But I think they can get away with this because right now, the cruise lines, they plan their schedules and their itineraries sometimes 2 years in advance. So where the ship is going to go, and they figure, well, they're locked in, so we can raise the price as much as we want. What are they going to do? Well, if the cruise lines didn't really publish this, and they only said, okay, we're going to sell you a 7-day cruise in the Caribbean, and we're going to stop at 2 or 3 ports and our private island, then that actually gives them a chance to bid out the stops months, maybe even a couple weeks ahead of time. Which means these ports, these countries, are going to have to start to actually really compete for close-in cruise traffic. They're going to have to offer, the better deal, in almost real time. Yeah, we're creating a real-time market, semi-real time, for cruise stops. And just FYI, yes, the cruise lines can change itineraries. The ship, it moves, and switching ports, within days is not a problem. They do it all the time, actually. So if anybody's had an itinerary shift from east to west because of a hurricane, it happens. It's actually not really a huge problem for the cruise lines. It's a headache, but it's something they're used to dealing with, right? Now, in terms of like excursions, right, they can still sell excursions. That's fine, because remember, they're all the same. They're all the same. Every island, every port offers the same excursion. So they'll sell you, in the cruise planner, they'll sell you swimming with the pigs. They'll sell you, a catamaran snorkeling trip. They'll sell you a liquor tasting tour. You might not know what liquor you're going to taste, but that's probably incidental if you're going on a liquor tasting tour. So they can still sell you all the excursions. You just might not know what day it is, but really, does that matter? Probably not. So yeah, you can still do your cruise planner. You can still book all your dining. You can still plan the type of excursion you want. You want a beach day? Okay, fine. But you're just not going to know what beach resort you're going to go to on that particular day. So when it comes time to actually plan the voyage, like a couple months ahead of time, they just put out the RFPs and let all these ports bid. Yeah, so that means the ports, they're going to have to start pressuring the local governments and the states to rein in these costs, to actually make it cheaper so they can put in that more competitive bid for that cruise ship to go there. Yeah, how about that? So would you do that if it gave the cruise lines significant leverage on these ports to stop with the ridiculous fee increase? Would you book a guarantee itinerary, a 7-day cruise in the Caribbean, right? Because it doesn't really matter where they go, right? And you can still do all the tours. You just didn't know exactly where you were going to go, right? And I would even say, maybe not even the ship, class of ship, sure. Like you would book a 7-day cruise on an Oasis class ship, but even maybe not which Oasis class ship, something like that, right? Would you do that if it let the cruise lines, fight back against all the fee increases? I would, absolutely. Now I say this having been everywhere, but, let me know in the comments below. After you subscribe, of course, would you do this? Would you help the cruise lines, stand up to some of these, petty and greedy politicians? Yeah, I would. So if they do this and you book a mystery 7-day guarantee itinerary cruise sometime in the future, maybe I will see you on board.